Hello, friends. Greetings and salutations. It's Chapo coming at you once again. On today's episode, we got Matt, Felix, and Amber on deck. And be forewarned, if you are one of our fail listeners who does not appreciate alpha movie mindset, switch off now. This is going to be another movie episode. And if you're one of our
Triggered.
fans, if you're one of our fans who just gets absolutely zero goop, tune, and clown, and is very upset about that, you're going to want to switch off. Or if you'd like your life to get better, you should keep listening as we break down a film that I think it's a film that's a period piece about the 90s, but it sums up 2020 on like the American character in a way that is so uncanny and so on point. I think it legitimately qualifies as a masterpiece. I'm referring
100%.
I'm referring,
Absolutely.
of course, to it is probably the best movie that 110-year-old Clint Eastwood has made since, I don't know, Gran Torino. And
Yep.
the difference is with Richard Jewell is what we were talking about. I like Richard Jewell unironically, whereas
Yeah.
Gran Torino I just enjoy because it's like one of the funniest movies ever made.
My experience at Gran Torino is I saw it when I was an 18-year-old fail lord with my sister, and on our way back, we had a huge argument stemming from me being like very some fail thing I was doing. I forget what it was. I think it was like lying about quitting smoking. It sounds like something I would do. But we had a huge argument, like screamed at each other in the car ride back. And then after like 20 minutes of yelling at each other, she went, we didn't even get to talk about how awful that was. We had to spend 2 hours deconstructing what a piece of shit Gran Torino was.
But he's been making the same movie every year. He's been trying to make this. He's trying to. I think now with this movie, you could look back and say for the last 20 years when he's had this assembly line of all these darkly lit movies that all look like they were shot inside a coffin, and he's been trying to tell the same story with a different lens, and none of them quite worked. And this was the moment. This movie is when it all clicked in. And it's like you could see what he was trying to get at with all those other movies, but he failed because like he picked the wrong material, or the wrong perspective. The stars come into alignment, and it just makes everything what he's trying to do sing. And you're like, damn, this guy is fucking good.
Yeah, it is the first time he attempted to tell a story that wasn't old put upon man reacts badly to a changing world. But I gotta say, other than, do you guys remember The Changeling?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, with Angelina
do not.
Jolie.
George C. Scott.
No,
wait a minute. No, I'm sorry.
No,
Never mind.
the
This is
the
Angelina-
2008
Oh god,
one.
that movie sucked. That was
It
terrible.
was so bad.
That was terrible.
I actually like Clint Eastwood as a director. He is the most reactionary director since Leni Riefenstahl, but I have a good time with his movies, even when they are turds. But that movie, I remember thinking, oh, he knows that it's not good because he said, she's actually very talented, but people don't give her enough credit because she's so beautiful.
Oh yes,
That is such an old guy thing to say. Oh my God,
yeah.
I can smell the mothballs
I
walking
know.
off him.
I know. Like, there's a patina of old man over
Yeah.
everything that he does.
Yeah, but what I think he needed, because like he basically was trying to tell a story like this put upon person, like the modern condition fucking over somebody, right? And he's been trying to tell that story like against the grain of hegemonic cultural liberalism, which is why it's interesting. But he couldn't quite get it because he didn't do it from the point of view of a loser.
Yes.
Right.
He needed
Yes.
a loser. Sully isn't a loser. Fucking American Sniper isn't a loser. The Mule isn't a loser.
Yeah, but to your point, Matt, I feel like Clint has been trying to tell this story over and over again for like the last 10 or 15 years. And he's like, doing movies that are based on real people and like real historical events. And, I think the closest one to Richard Jewell was Sully because, it's like sort of like an average, like well-meaning guy who sort of like does something heroic and then is fucked over by like a larger system of bureaucratic control and management.
Birds.
But the thing with Sully, I remember like him talking about like why he wanted to make this movie, and Sully was a very bad movie, is that he was like, well, I didn't think much of the story after I saw it on the news, but Then I found out that the FAA bureaucrats were trying to take his job from him. And some bitch, Skylar White, was trying to divorce him and take away his small business plane flying rights. And like this is like the Clint point of view, and it's just like I Felix, like you posted about it last night, where it was just like he is like 97 years old. And then, like, he after just years of putting out really dull, fucking like just boring movies, like grasping at what he achieves in this movie, he fucking pulls it off, and he just throws out a goddamn heater. And you're like, wow, maybe the Joe Biden presidency won't be so bad. Maybe he'll actually,
maybe like there's a certain point of dementia you get where you're so enraptured in memories you have from 70 years ago that it gives you a unique visual understanding and director's
You become
eye.
unstuck from time. You're the Christman Haderach.
Yeah, it's like if Dr. Manhattan
Yes.
directed a movie. So Joe Biden, the first 2 years of his presidency, awful. Austerity. There's going to be some bill where it's like, if you buy Chuck Taylors and went to a historically black college but are of 12% Central Asian descent, you can open an interest-free payday loan store or something. Like, just nonsense. And then year 3, boom, Medicare for all. What I love about this movie is I think that, like, people ran away with the idea that it's a MAGA narrative because it's against...
What?
Yeah.
Someone said that?
People said that because
the thing is that the bare structure of the plot is essentially like you could read it as, if you want to, and you want to be a dork, and you want to be a killjoy about it, you could read it as a straight up allegory for Trump. Trump is Richard Jewell, and he is a guy who wants to do what's best, but is beset by the evil forces arrayed against him by like the deep state and the fake news media. The problem is that makes Trump Richard Jewell, which makes him a fucking loser and oaf.
Right. Like that's why I love this movie, is because the protagonist is a loser, and he's not like a completely sympathetic loser either. Like,
No.
You can see how he could like break bad and be like a fucking like a small town psycho cop.
He's very freakish and has like this weird fucking worship of authority. But the point of the movie isn't that Richard Jewell is this amazing, perfect guy, and the awful news media and FBI set him up. It's that this shouldn't happen to anyone. Which
why are we letting this happen to people in this fucking country?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because a lot of the people that complain about this, and let's be honest, the only reason they complain about this is because this movie is about a journalist being awful.
Yeah.
It's about a journalist being fucking awful.
Just a cunt.
Yeah.
One of the things that this actually reminded me of that kind of fits into the whole like, oh, this is a MAGA movie thing, is I started thinking about like, oh, this is like when like the CIA grabbed some 14-year-old because he said he was going to bomb someone off of a gaming stream, and the panic is that like any sort of resentfulness that is reflected is automatically dangerous.
Amber, I think it's amazing how people who correctly identify that doing this to young black men and doing this to young Muslims is completely insane, that the tide is stacked against them. But they're so ready to do it to people like Richard Jewell, or to do it with the Joker, where they suddenly these people who are rightfully skeptical of terrorism narratives and the national security state are suddenly going, well, the military says we should be careful because this movie might radicalize people.
Yeah,
right.
I want police officers at the Joker screenings.
Yeah,
I want to get into like breaking down like bit by bit the movie. I have so many notes. I was just watching this last night, just madly typing out notes for today's episode. But I want to get back to what Matt said, and I think this is like the really crucial point. Is that like Clint Eastwood, as like one of America's premier reactionary artists, is like he's made a lot of bad movies, made a lot of dog shit. A lot of his views are kind of tiresome, but it's often in the guise of the cranky old reactionary that some of the most scabrous commentary about American culture is able to flourish. But like not like critique and commentary that's not just stupid like right wing drivel, that like really does cut to the bone and is real. But the crucial point is what Matt said, is that he's been looking for a movie about how like the government and the media fuck over and crush like well-meaning, like diligent people just doing their job. But crucially, he had to do a movie about a loser. That is so important because it doesn't allow either him or the viewer to imagine that they're Chris Kyle, and that like imbues some heroic narrative to it. It's what he's showing in Richard Jewell is that like this is how badly you get treated when you believe in all of the shit that right-wing people believe in about like respecting law enforcement and the government and like wanting to like help and protect people and shit like that. And like he makes it seem pathetic. And like it's like that's what really like makes like this movie is just so acid tinged about, like I said, the character of America in 2020 as it relates to just like our schizophrenic relationship to the government, where like we revere cops but then also want to overthrow the state. And it just like it shows you like just how badly the government and like the FBI can fucking ruin anyone's life if they wanted to. But it also shows how psychotic you have to be to like want to be a cop and love them and fucking like make your whole life about like admiring law enforcement.
It's not psychotic at all. It's you just bought, frankly, one of the strongest narratives that run through American civil society and culture.
Yeah. And it's something that I love about this is, Jewell is a reactionary, but he's not a completely masculine reactionary. He's a big doughboy who lives with his mother, who dotes on him, and sticks his little fat finger in the cake she's baking to try to eat a little bit, and she pulls it back as an adult man.
That's why it was shocking that like Eastwood even took on this project.
Yeah, I mean, he's never been able to be that vulnerable in his like authorial sympathies before. He's always had to be a guy like him, because you remember this guy is the guy who decided to run for mayor of Carmel, California, because the ADA made him build a ramp to the hotel he owned. I mean, he's like a persnickety rich guy. He's a rich old prick, and he's like, you don't want to hear him complain about this shit because his complaints are piddling. A guy like you have to have actual like people who are malused by like the liberal state and have to see like the real results of that, which is people who aren't equipped to deal with it.
Something that I think is important to note, a lot of people who are set up and framed and had their lives ruined and entrapped and destroyed by the press, by the FBI, by the national security state, by the larger media, they're also weak reactionaries.
Yeah.
What is a religious fundamentalist but a sort of weak reactionary often?
Mm-hmm.
What is a failed, not quite terrorist? Someone who's not actually going to do it, but you fucking entrap him. You push him along.
Right.
You radicalize him. You make him insane. Someone who is already very malleable to that. The point of it isn't that we have a perfect protagonist or a perfect subject of law enforcement and media torture. The point of it is that no matter how weak or reactionary or whatever the views are, that you can just say, oh, well, he was in that position, that it's never okay to do this. That's why that's why I have no real problem with the ideology of this movie at all. And I think it's completely childish to read this as a MAGA movie just because of the two main antagonists. And people talk about it like as character assassination with what they did with Scruggs, Olivia Wilde's character, by having her fuck the FBI agent for source. But there's a real thing she did that I think is worse than that.
Yes.
That no one comments on that. And that's uncritically reprinting law enforcement sources.
Yes.
A huge problem for journalists. And everyone who has made a huge show of changing how media is and their support for Black Lives Matter and all these things that I agree with in how the media frames crimes. They said that they have a blind spot when talking about this movie, even though this character was doing the exact same thing we're supposed to be paying attention to.
Right.
Critical repetition of law enforcement sources. That was what this person's job was.
That's the beauty of like the glamour and the crystal ball of like liberalism, because you look through one lens and that character is just this unscrupulous hack repeating police talking points, which is now like the worst kind of person you can be in the Black Lives Matter era. Or you turn it a little bit because it's in the context of a Clint Eastwood MAGA movie and she's a female journalist.
Yeah, the bravest kind.
That's the defining characteristic.
Okay, let's dive into the film itself, because like there's so much stuff here that bears talking about. And I mean, in case you don't know the story of Richard Jewell, it's about the sort of like hapless oaf security guard who the FBI stitched up as being the culprit for the Centennial Park Olympic bombing in 1996. But the film opens in 1986, and Richard Jewell, played by Paul Walter Hauser, in an absolutely virtuoso performance.
Oh my God.
Just
amazing.
Adam Sandler pipped at the post. Best performance of last year. Paul Walter Hauser as Richard Jewell is just so heartfelt and stunning in this role. There's so many fucking layers to the performance, and just like
he didn't even get an Oscar nomination. It's a Shonda.
It could have been.
Should have walked away with it.
It could have been just like a caricature of like this kind of guy that we've made fun of relentlessly on the show, but it's so much more than that. But I have to note that the very first line of dialogue that you hear in the movie is spoken by Watson Bryant, who's played by Sam Rockwell, who portrays the lawyer that will go on to be his sort of savior when he gets like really fucked up with the FBI. But the first line of like audible dialogue you hear in the movie is Sam Rockwell's character on the phone with someone at a law firm, or it's the U.S. Small Business Administration, and he says here, the first thing you hear in the movie is, "You're violating the most sacred rights of a small business owner." And then he goes, "You're threatening me? Do it to my face. I'm at blah blah blah." He gives the address. He's like, "Come on down. I'd be love to see you." He's like getting in like a forum flame war, and then he just goes, "Good talking to you." He goes, "Good talking to you, Senator." And it's just like, damn, this guy is fucking for real. Yeah, this guy's fucking for real. He's ready to fight a senator over violating small business rights. So it's like it begins in 1986, and it's like the first meeting of Richard Jewell and Watson Bryant. And at the time, Richard Jewell is a lowly supply clerk at the U.S. Small Business Administration, and he's sort of like he says like, "Oh, like, hey, I see you're new here," and he pulls up with his little supply cart, and then he lets Watson Bryant know that he's already filled his desk not just with tape and staples, but with Snickers bars, because he noticed that there were Snickers wrappers in his garbage can. And like this establishes like something so important about the Richard Jewell character, is that like he works these bullshit like fucking like menial jobs, but he puts all of himself into it. He's like just so dedicated to being the best supply clerk imaginable. And as a result of that, all of his coworkers just shit all over him. He is just abused and humiliated by people simply because he wants to do his job well.
And he fucks it up by trying to do extra credit. Constantly.
Yes, exactly.
Because he has the ability, because he's not a full, like, he is an oaf in all of his complexity, because he's very incompetent in some ways, but in other ways he is very competent because of that attention to detail and his focus, and how much of himself he puts behind his work. But that means, but he doesn't understand the social dimension that is like a part of success in any endeavor.
He's like socially maladapted, and he doesn't understand what is actually expected of him.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not just anticipating me on this thing. It's also not being weird. That's also a requirement of the job.
Right.
The unspoken rule of America that you can't be that strange. You can't be exactly what Richard Jewell is,
there's manners. That this shit isn't about ability necessarily. It's about ability to absorb manners. And you sink or swim in this country based on manners, not on virtue or ability.
Which plays very hard into everyone's characterization of him later, and their suspicions of him, because he acts weird. So they're like, "This is the way a bomber would act." It's like, no, that's the way a weird person acts.
Yeah.
Yes, and in some ways, generally, few people have it harder in America than the socially maladroit but enthusiastic freaks who. Where was Richard Jewell supposed to learn how to behave normally?
Yep.
Where in his life?
Well, that's the crucial thing.
And also, some people can't ever do that.
Yeah, They can't. They couldn't do it if they wanted to. And how are we going to treat people who for whom this is not an expression of like their worthiness? It's pure chance.
But Felix, the crucial thing is that like you said, it's about manners, not about virtue or effort or ability. But like Richard Jewell is like the kind of person who has received his sort of cultural programming about what a competent someone worthy of admiration and respect in our society. It's like he's received his programming like from early Clint Eastwood movies, right?
Yeah,
and because he like takes it seriously.
Well, and his mother.
Yeah, and his sweet mother, which we'll talk about in a second. But it's just sort of like there's something so tragic about like there's no one America hates more than anyone who like really seriously believes in playing by the rules and doing a good job. Like that's such an important thing going forward. And like so he meets Watson Bryant, and it's this sort of like the chance meeting between him and this like sort of swaggy like lawyer who stands up for small business rights. And it cuts from there at the law firm to he's on his lunch break, and he's in an arcade playing one of those like games where like the gun is attached to the arcade box by like a cable, and he's just sort of like robotically like firing at targets. And Sam Rockwell meets him, like, sort of runs into him there and starts playing with him and just, pulling the trigger with him. And then Richard Jewell says, it's kind of like practice for my future in law enforcement, maybe FBI, Secret Service, I'm thinking. And Rockwell goes, well, like, why would you do that? Because like it's a style like Rockwell's like he's sort of this very like libertarian guy who's very skeptical of authority figures. And in Richard Jewell, and Paul Walter Hauser, he finds his exact opposite in a man who just like imprints on any authority figure around him like a baby bird and just follows it. And he says, well, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to get in law enforcement? And Jewell says, because I believe in protecting people.
And that, I'm sorry, that literally is why a lot of people want to go into law enforcement. You can say all fucking day long that they have some sort of like psychotic fucking Clint Eastwood fantasy, and yes, a lot of them do, but neither does that, not all of them, and neither does that preclude also a sense of virtue that they associate with being a protector, no matter how fucking like outdated or absurd that seems to anyone who is critical of that kind of authority.
The sheep and the wolf thing from American Sniper is like that, the undergirding idea there.
Well, I thought that was amazing because American Sniper has this very managing look at the world where it's like you're either like a weak pussy cuck or you're a wolf, and you have to be bad to protect everyone. But what I love about this is like there are some characters that you could say are wolves, like John Hamm's character, but it points out those aren't the only two types. Sometimes you're just a fucking loser.
Yeah. What about losers?
Yeah. What about
they want to help, but they don't know how.
Not just that, but everyone could be, given their conditions, a sheep or a wolf. Like we all have the sheep and the wolf inside of us, or whatever.
Right. That's the thing. It's not pro-cop in saying that cops should have free reign or that they're fundamentally good people. It's saying what Sam Rockwell's character says, that the having power makes you a fucking maniac.
Yeah.
Richard Jewell is a little bit of a maniac, and we see that when he works his job as campus security. He's a little bit of a maniac. He's not as much of a maniac as
John Hamm's character.
John Hamm's character, as the FBI, as cops who murder people. That said, it's not saying, oh, this guy has a right to be a cop. It's saying that this guy has the right to human dignity, and everyone does.
He has the right to human dignity, and guess what? When you put him in a job when he doesn't have a lot of power, but can essentially, when you give him parameters and restrict his authority, he's actually pretty good at it, and he does keep people safe.
Well, the protecting job he was good at. He was bad at the policing part. The authoritarian part.
Yes.
Because that shouldn't be a job.
Absolutely.
So it's like
nailed it.
In these early scenes, I think it's important. Like that Rockwell is nice to him. He calls him Radar, like from MASH, and they have a little bit of like a sort of like inter-office joviality with one another. But it's clear that Rockwell just kind of like barely tolerates him, and he's just like, but he's the only one who treats him with like any level of dignity out of anyone who interacts with. And then like, so Jewell comes into his office at one point, and he's like, hey, I just wanted to say bye. I'm taking another job. And he gives him a Snickers bar before he leaves. It's so like wholesome and heartbreaking at the same time. And before he does, Rockwell, he takes like a crisp hundo out of his wallet, and he's like, hey, I'm giving this to you as a quid pro quo. And he's just like, I'm giving it to you because when you get your badge, don't become an asshole. And like Felix says, he says a little bit of power turns a person into a monster. And I'm giving you this so that you don't do that. I can collect it from you like later when you get your badge. So like that ends. Then it cuts like 10 years ahead in time, and it's now 1996. And Richard Jewell is working at a campus security. He's working as a campus security officer at a college, just getting shit on by obnoxious college brats who were like, "Oh, fuck you, rent a cop. I can drink beer if I want because my parents paid tuition here. It's like I'm paying rent. Oh, you have no authority over me." And what happens?
It's literally like it's a pity they can't both get brutalized.
And what happens? It's like he goes into like a dorm room to like, you know, like he's like, "What I say? I said you no drinking on campus this semester." He's doing his job, and then it cuts
He's
to
being a psycho.
yeah, he is.
still.
Yeah, he is.
But
He's being too intense, but the issue here isn't that the kids are shitty assholes, which they are. The issue isn't that he is exacting authority in a shitty, aggressive way, which he is. The issue is that the university system is a fucking daycare and shouldn't exist.
But
Yeah.
yeah, Amber,
That is
Amber,
a bad design of structure.
Am-
We
Am-
could avoid this entirely if we decided you're 18, you're an adult, get an apartment, go to class, or don't. I don't care. It's your fucking life. But you don't get to go to sleepaway camp where you have a fucking babysitter that we have to charge with exacting some kind of authority on you, but also you sort of have rights, but not really, and you're kind of a tenant, but not really. It's all bullshit. The problem is I'm sorry, it's the fucking university.
So yeah, Amber, he's paid to be a babysitter to these obnoxious college brats, and he does his job, and like his job is a little bit stupid, and he does it with a little bit too much of a manic zeal about his dedication to law enforcement, even though he's not really a cop. So what happens? He's the babysitter. Then the parents come home and he gets called into the dean's office. This movie has an evil dean in it. And he thinks he's going into the office to get a commendation for being so good at his job, stopping college kids from boozing. But no, the dean chews him out for doing his job. And then
Yeah,
also
these are our customers.
yeah, and then he also reveals that Richard Jewell has been prior to this latest incident been performing drunk driving pullovers on the highway outside of college and he's like, "Richard, we don't have any jurisdiction." And he goes, "I know, but I believe in law and order. You can't have a country without it." And what I love about this scene is that it is like the low-T academia version of literally every scene in Dirty Harry with him and the stupid chief. Where they're like, "Damn it, Callahan.
Oh my God, that's true.
Damn it, Callahan. Did you have to destroy so much property? You know, there are political concerns here." And then he's like, "I'll tell you what, Lieutenant. Maybe I should have let them rape another few Girl Scouts before I drove that car through a store window.
Billy's dead, McGarnacle.
I'm trying to eat here." So what does he do? And he's like, and then what he reveals is that like he's like, "Well, Dean, he quotes the dean's own speech back to him about how he quote doesn't want any Mickey Mousing around on campus." And the dean is just so fucking taken aback that someone who does Richard Jewell's job would have paid attention to some perfunctory speech to open the semester, or like I said, like he's blown away that he takes the job that he's been given seriously at all. And obviously,
You're just here for insurance purposes.
yeah, exactly.
You're here so the fucking parents of these brats don't fucking sue us when one of them falls out a window after drinking a fucking fifth of Kahlua.
Right. In this, Richard Jewell violates the basic social contract of his station of employment and society that he's just supposed to exist to satisfy insurance purposes and to be a movable piece of furniture. Someone that the dean, the students, anyone can just disrespect, but is put in place like a cigar store statue. Just an ornament, the thing that's supposed to be in that institution. And there's a certain amount of shit he's supposed to take for about $7 an hour.
Okay, so then Richard Jewell, he thinks he's going to receive some sort of medal of commendation from the dean for fulfilling his beer bust arrest quota. But what happens? He gets fired from his job. He loses his job, and then the scene right after that is him and his friend at the gun range. And he's sort of like he's expressing his frustration to his friend. He's just like, I was really good at my job, like I took it seriously. And his friend is sort of like, why? It was a bullshit job, just like babysitting college kids, bullshit. And then he's just like, yeah, I know, man, but like it stings. And then his friend says, he goes, "The Olympics are coming, brother. You can police the whole damn world." And then just smash cut to him just pitching bullets through a target with an AR. Just just tearing apart one of those paper body targets with an AR. And I was just on my feet, just God Clint Eastwood. He's still got that fucking heat. He's still got that fastball. I love it. It's
I literally
so good.
too thought that like, oh, this is, and why it's good is because despite being like a reactionary image, what it does is actually give a decent kind of portrayal of what gun culture largely is, which is nerds.
Yeah. These are fucking nerd losers.
Yeah.
But I just love that line with the Olympics. You can police the whole world. So from there, it's like, okay, the Olympics are coming, and then the whole first third of this movie has this like very like eerie and menacing vibe to it, because we all know what's coming, and like none of the characters are ours. So it's this ominous tone to all of it. So it cuts from there to introduces Olivia Wilde's character, or as I like to call her, the most evil woman ever. She embodies all of Clint Eastwood's fears of like female sexuality and femininity. She is just this like oversexed Gorgon who like hates all other women and just like wishes she had a cock like one of the boys, and she hates Kenny Rogers and normal people. She looks down on everyone. She's just like, she is the fear of like monstrous femininity like unleashed on society. That's like Clint Eastwood's first movie was Play Misty for Me, which is exactly about like the fear of like a sexed up woman destroying a man's life. But it's like that character has a career, and she works for the media. These broads are now in the fake news media. Exactly. She doesn't need to stab the pillow. She can just the poison pen. And it's just okay. From there, then we see John Hamm's character, who's like the head of the FBI's like Atlanta division, and he's in charge of security for Olympic Park. And he is the asshole that Sam Rockwell warned about in Law Enforcement. He is the guy. He is the Fed cop whose badge just turned him into a fucking monster. Like just such a vile person. And like these are the two forces that are going to come together, quite literally, to destroy Richard Jewell's life. And then finally we're introduced to his sweet, sweet mother, played by Kathy Bates, and just such a fucking beautiful, moving portrait. And
amazing performance.
There's just something. This is the second time I watched this movie. The first time was like Matt and I saw it for the first time together back when that was the thing you could do. But what really hit me watching it the second time was just how heartbreaking Kathy Bates' performance is. She's just the sweetest, kind of saddest mom, and just all the scenes with her are just imbued with such a kind of like a frantic mom energy that just really, really cut to the bone for me. It was just so affecting. Like her performance is just this like just sweet, loving mother who dotes on her son, and she's horned up for Tom Brokaw. She just wants to watch her stories.
And Kenny Rogers.
Yeah.
She loves her big dumb son.
She's not disappointed in her fat loser son. She loves him. She's proud of him. She's doing the best she can
earnestly.
with this hunk of clay that God gave to her.
Yeah. And
She's
you know
not
what?
judgmental.
Like, he is trying, and she has like there's implication that they're struggling. And at one point he says, I just feel like you deserve better. And she's like, well, we all deserve better, but this is what we're doing, which is the attitude that you actually have to have when you're struggling economically. Like you can't deny it. You can't be like, oh, this is temporary, and this is or if I work hard, I'm going to get out of this, or I did something wrong and that's why I'm doing this, or there was some sort of glitch. You can't be like that. But like you do have to acknowledge that it's real and that it sucks, but also you got to move the fuck on.
Yeah, Amber,
that is the point of the movie. No one deserves this, but that's what we got.
And crucially,
we have more coming.
Crucially, what she says, Amber, is like, she says, we all deserve better, honey, but this is what we got. So just get out there and do your job. That's what she says. And like, so he's gotten the job as the security guard at Centennial Park, and he's like excited about it because he's like, if I do good with this job, I could possibly get back into law enforcement. But it had also been previously established that he was at one point a sheriff's deputy, but lost that job for unspecified reasons, probably because of his overzealous commitment and sort of strange personality. But he says to her before he leaves to go to the job for the first time, he says to her, I'm still law enforcement, right? Even if I'm just watching stereo equipment. And his mom says to him, heck yeah, you are. You're still the good guy warding off the bad guys.
Yeah.
And like he's just he like I said, it's this idea that he really believes in law enforcement. He just wants to keep people safe, and then he does. So like then this movie gets to the point where its portrayal of Centennial Park in the 1996 Olympics is such a
my
good,
God.
weird historical
Perfect.
moment.
So good.
And it's just this
All those high-waisted fucking Bermuda shorts with pleats that women were wearing for some reason.
It's this very weird it's like a period piece. This is a historical procedural, but it like the 90s don't feel that long ago, even though 1996 was 25 years ago. And it's just this moment that's trapped in time, and there are 3 different very long and crowd focused shots on the live music that's going on in Centennial Park, beginning with Kenny Rogers performing The Gambler to a crowd of people. And it's just like, and it's just these people they're having a great time. It's wholesome, but it's also very sort of surreal, robotic, and menacing. And like there's a moment that happens in this movie when Matt and I were watching it for the first time that it was like I was already really enjoying it. I was already really loving Paul Walter Hauser and all of the really like funny, dark things that it was saying about America and law enforcement. But there's a scene where after Kenny Rogers performs, the crowd in the Centennial Park for the 1996 Olympics starts chanting, USA, USA, USA. And then right after, they just drop the beat for the Macarena. And it's this whole crowd of people. It's like Clint it's like a long, like big crowd shot and of just this sea of people just robotically dancing the Macarena. And like that scene to me better encapsulated like the end of history moment in America better than anything I've ever seen. It was just, it's not just that they're at the site of a bombing that nobody knows is going to take place, so it's imbued with this real like sinister energy, or just like they seem almost already dead in a way. But it's like America at the end of the 20th century, where like everyone was like all of the comfort and pleasure and joys of life. No one knew what was coming. No one saw the 21st century coming, and it's just like they're like the living dead trapped in the amber of this moment. That scene just it hit me so fucking hard. This crowd of people dancing the Macarena.
They're dancing like history's marionettes.
Something I love about the Centennial Park scene, and specifically the movie as a whole, we talked about it, the color palette and the lighting of it. All Eastwood movies have this very flat lighting that we talked about, which is probably, as Matt and Will alluded to, what allows him to pump out one every year, which is an insane schedule for a man of his age.
He shoots these in like a week.
Yeah, and that's why they all have the same coffin flat dark lighting, because that's easy to set up. You don't have to do cliques and close-ups, and that means you can get more setups in a day because you don't want to die before the movie's done.
And that's why this movie, like, I hate the 90s nostalgia stuff. Most people do it because it's bright. It washes you out. It's bleach.
It looks like a Mountain Dew commercial from the time.
Because everyone around our age or younger who doesn't even remember it wants it to be this completely bright, shining time, this utopia that we briefly grasped, and if we imitate it physically enough, we can maybe get back to it. It's only the people who actually lived through it and remember it that know it wasn't that. It was hollow and dark, and and there was a sense of foreboding. You didn't know what it was, but you knew whatever this wasn't going to last forever. And that's the feeling all throughout Centennial Park. This will not last forever. Even like the joy in people's faces and their movements is so fucking hollow, and there is nothing behind it. It can't last. It's running on fucking afterburner. It's the afterburner of American industrial society.
They're remembering fucking Nickelodeon's Double Dare when actually it was more of an acid green Fight Club color.
Mm-hmm. Felix, God loves doing 90s nostalgia, and this pilgrim thinks if he does enough 90s nostalgia, he will become as God is.
Yes.
Okay, so
that is literally it. There is a psycho thing going on with 90s retro aesthetic and like sort of liberal culture where it's like subconsciously, if we make enough offerings to God, he will channel the 90s stock market and Bill Clinton through Joe Biden's decrepit body. It's not going to happen. We're stuck here.
So then there's one more really amazing scene in Centennial Park before the actual bombing scene. And that's when Olivia Wilde and John Hamm connect. And Olivia Wilde, John Hamm's doing security in the crowd. He's just looking like a fucking like sullen statue, like hating all these people around him and being bored at his job because like he wants a fucking bombing to happen like that. Like that's a
So does she.
part.
So does she.
So does she.
But
And she says
he is even more contemptuous of her.
Yeah.
Contemptuous of the crowd than she
Yeah.
is.
So,
she's a cunt. He is a bigger cunt.
So yeah, Olivia
Yes.
Wilde approaches him and she goes, and then the whole crowd's dancing the Macarena, and she comes up to him and goes, "Welcome to the happiest place on earth. What a fucking nightmare. Anything crimey happening?" And then it's like almost implied, like, "Hey, if there's not, can we maybe concoct something together, the media and government? Can we maybe make some horrible thing happen so we have something interesting to talk about?" And then Matt, you talk about the John Hamm line of dialogue.
Oh God, I love this so much. So she's like trying to get him to dance, and he's looking sullen, and she goes, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "I'm bored." And she goes, "We're all bored." And he looks around him at the crowd doing the Macarena and goes, "They aren't bored."
So
And that's one of those phenomena that is like one of the things that shapes our media and our understanding of the world around us that just goes unstated is there is this huge cultural chasm between Americans who went to college and the ones who didn't. And one of the big things that makes it hard to talk about is that almost all culture is made by people who did. And so there's like there's a degree of like contempt and fear and anxiety about that chasm that they aren't even aware of. And you need an old reactionary like Clint to like cut through that.
I'm sorry, Kenny Rogers rules. Those people were having a good time.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And you fucking suck if you can't hear the Gambler live and have a good time. You're the one who sucks.
Yeah, no,
Know when
because
to
you're fucking you've made your fucking resume your life.
So
Yeah.
you guys don't mind going long on this one. We're like not even
No, let's
halfway
do it.
down to the movie.
Do it.
Okay.
It
Matt,
was
is
a
that some
good
sort of
movie.
bird cawing in your backyard?
Yes, I have a bird in the backyard.
All
Sorry.
right.
I'll
This
try to feed
motherfucker's
it.
got birds.
It picks food. Yeah, Matt has this bird that picks food out of its teeth.
They formed a symbiotic relationship. It's very beautiful.
Yeah.
So okay, it's like that's the first night of the Centennial Park concerts, and it's like his mom shows up. They dance to Kenny Rogers together. It's so sweet.
So sweet.
And then it gets to the night of the bombing, and wouldn't you know it, it's Jack Mack in concert, and then Richard Jewell is like, he's like, Jack Mack's my favorite artist.
Well, he says that so that he is not being told to go home because he has diarrhea.
Yes,
which
no,
this is the most. In many ways, this might be the most Chapo movie ever made.
Yes, it really is. It crucially, he has the runs on the night of the bombing, and crucially, it is his like duck walking to a porta potty, which leads him to discover the backpack left under a park bench that is filled with fucking 3 giant pipe bombs and nails. So he sees this, he notices like an unattended bag left under a park bench, but then is immediately distracted by yet another group of rude, drunk teens who viciously abuse and disrespect him and call him lard ass and fucking basically threaten him for telling him not to throw bottles at the production tower. So he brings them over to the park bench where the bomb is, and they sort of sit down there and they're like, "Duh, blah, what's this? Blah, let's fucking take it and sell it to the House of Blues." The teens think they can just sell a backpack to the House of Blues. That was very strange to me. But crucially, these drunken, rude teens, by sort of tipping the bag over onto its side, perform a crucial act that probably saved dozens of lives in that bombing, because by putting it on the ground, it directs the force of the blast, it diffuses it, and if it had been propped up, it would have just sent all of those fucking ball bearings and nails just straight out into that crowd full of people, and Christ knows how many people would have died if that hadn't happened, or if Richard Jewell hadn't done the correct thing. And he still notices the suspicious package. He makes the cops call it a suspicious package when they call it in, because initially they're like, forget about it, who cares? And then they bring in the bomb tech guy, who opens up the bag, stands up, and his face is fucking like just ashen white. And Jewell says, he's like, "They told us in training that if you see the bomb tech guy go pale, that's when you got to run." So like,
That's an amazing line.
Yeah.
That's an amazing line too. He's like, "I remember this from homework."
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And he's really thriving in a crisis situation because he actually studied the procedure. And a bomb guy in Atlanta has probably never encountered an actual bomb threat.
Yeah. So they're all like, "We got to get these people back," and he's loving like talking in that cop talk which is like, like that kind of guy is something like a character that we've lampooned on this show so many times before. But it's interesting to see such a sympathetic portrayal of that guy because he just loves saying things like, there could be a second device. We have to form a perimeter.
We got a bomb. You gotta go now. You afraid you're gonna miss the Jack Black concert? Come on. Get down there right now. We got a bomb. Move. Get the lead out of your pants. Come on now.
He just loves saying shit like that robotic cop language.
But they do have to form a perimeter.
Yeah, they
It
do.
is, at this moment, it is the actual procedure.
Yes, this is what you want it.
Something I thought of during that moment was that, like, if you are, like, after we greatly reformed police one day under the, I don't know.
Jean-Luc Mélenchon presidency.
Yeah, presidency.
Yes.
It's like, obviously, like, imprison or deport all the cops who kill people, but the ones who didn't, like, the few who are, like, Richard Jewell types, probably still too zealous to, like, do this job in society, but not, like, completely racist death squad members, the few that are that way. You should give them a job where they, like, work at a paintball course doing stuff like this. Give them a pretend job like this where they're like diffusing bombs at fake concerts and shit.
And Amber, like the point is like the whole first like quarter of the movie shows his overzealous commitment to being a law enforcement wannabe guy. But this is the one situation where you really want a former perimeter, make an ocular assessment. This is the one time where you really want that guy overdoing his fucking job.
He saved lives. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
So lo and behold, the bomb fucking goes off. It showers fucking nails just straight through a statue, and like 2 people were killed in that bombing, and like hundreds are injured. But I mean, like it could have been a lot worse, had he not done what he did and had those rude teens not knocked the bag over to begin with.
Yeah. So a pipe bomb going off at a concert. What a nightmare scenario. That could be hundreds dead. Horrifying.
Yeah. And so and then John Hamm springs into action, even though he's like hundreds of yards away. He swoops in and like they're doing the sort of jurisdictional dick measuring. And then he's like, oh, how about all of you shut the fuck up? This is a federal crime. I'm the FBI. If you want to help us, get in fucking line, and he's already got his dick so hard because like this is like the career making opportunity. And all it took was a few hundred people getting showered with ball bearings from a fucking bomb. And then, like, the day after, immediately, like, Jewell is back on his job as private security. And what happens? Some fucking worm from, like, AT&T, like, PR division immediately just scoops him up and pimps him out to Katie Couric. And it's just, like, this is where, like, the media takes notice of him. And they build him up correctly, like, as a hero who was in the right place at the right time and did his job and saved a lot of lives. But it's just immediately. Yeah, he's cynically, exactly. Like I said, like the AT&T media guy scoops him up and pimps him out to CNN, and he goes on Katie Couric, and then even more hilariously, the sort of like a New York City Will Menaker type shows up and is just like, Richard, we'd love to offer you a publishing contract to tell your story. And it's like, and for the first time in his life, it's just like he's and crucially, like when he goes on TV with Katie Couric, he's so humble and self-effacing about like eschewing any kind of like is it heroism or notoriety, and he's just like like the everyone else who did their job, he was like, I was only part of it, like they're the real heroes, like let's think about the victims. He says and does like all the right things about,
and it's not false humility at all. He believes in the authority, and he believes that he's a part of like a larger institution.
So like for the first time in his life, like he's finally getting the respect that he like that eluded him, and he's got Olympic athletes and cops like clapping him on the back and being like, way to go, Richard. He's gonna have a book deal. He gets home and Kathy Bates is like, Tom Brokaw was talking about you. But here's the
sweetest, when she goes, you're a rock star. Like, oh my God.
So here's where the turn happens. And like this is very key here. As soon as the media adopt him and raise him up, at the exact same moment, the glowing eye of Sauron that is the FBI immediately fixates on him. And it's like, it's like the ancient Greeks believe that like never let the gods see you happy. And like this is really what this movie is showing. And it's like as soon as becomes the man, the FBI is working overtime to like make him the guy, because it's not like thoroughly. It's not like explicitly laid out, but they choose him because they had no fucking idea who did this bombing, and they had no leads whatsoever, and were completely like caught off guard by it, and like looked like shit. The Olympics on like the biggest global stage, they just let a bomb go off in the city that like the U.S. city that was hosting the fucking Olympics. This is like the reason we have an FBI is to prevent shit like this from happening. So what happens? And where do they first get on to this idea?
And he was easy too, because he's Richard Jewell and not fucking John Hamm.
Exactly.
He looks
Exactly.
like Richard Jewell.
So how did they get on to Richard Jewell? How did they get this idea that he was the suspect? It's the evil fucking Dean from the beginning who calls the FBI to drop a dime on him for no other reason than like, oh, like he just thinks that like, oh, I saw Richard on TV, and the kind of notoriety he's getting now is just sort of what I felt he was always searching for here as a campus security officer, and it made me nervous. So I'm just going to snitch on him to the fucking feds. It's the
I'm just
evil
gonna
Dean
ruin his
again.
life.
And it's like 24 hours after he was on Katie Couric and CNN and hailed as a hero. His fucking photo is on a fucking corkboard in a conference room with like 15 FBI agents. And it's just like, from there, it's just like he is fucked. Once your photo is on that corkboard, they just invent a story and a profile that makes him the bomber. And the funny thing is, and like we were talking about this at the beginning, Richard Jewell did fit the profile of like a bomber, but the point is, once your photo is on that FBI corkboard, everybody fits the profile. That's the fucking point. And it's just like, like I said, the eye of Sauron just gets trained on him, and
It's really the corkboard that's the problem.
yeah. And then what do the feds do? They wire up one of his coworkers to try to incriminate him, send him to his house. He brings him dinner to him and his mom, and he immediately starts asking him about the bomb as he's being recorded. And of course, Richard Jewell knows fucking everything about making homemade bombs, and just like just rattles off every detail about how you could conceivably build a device like that.
This shit is nerd stuff. I mean, like if he was born years later, he would have been like a first-person shooter gamer or something.
He would have been on an American CSGO team, Richard Jewell.
100%. I don't know what that is, but I know that you're right.
He would have been the most respected of all gamers, a CSGO pro.
So like, you know, the forces behind the scenes are rapidly being arrayed against him. And then you got Olivia Wilde approaches John Hamm at a bar. And of course, she's under pressure too to get a story. And what does John Hamm do? He leaks Richard Jewell's name to her to get some goop. Like that's it. Like that's the legwork. You know, she's like it's like these career women. They're all whores.
Yeah.
And
she's it's the only performance that I find in the movie that I find kind of hammy.
Oh no, she's going for the rafter.
And I get it. It's Olivia Wilde. Her main job was to be like a babe, to be like a sexy version of the blockheads from Gumby. But like, it's kind of actually jarring when you have all of these really brilliant, subtle performances, and then you go to her and she's just, I'm a sex pot.
Yeah,
she's the only character.
Every scene with Olivia Wilde, like at the paper or working her services, is just like, I hope I can write a big story so I can buy more tampons to put in my pussy to soak up all the cum from guys.
Yeah, that was what we call, though, a directing issue, probably. More so than her.
She's the only
part of the movie.
Clint probably pulled her aside and was like, act like those whores who wear those skirts.
This is part of the movie that people had the most objection to, because this is based on a real reporter who really did this, and she's dead now, so people say it's unfair that she can't defend herself, and there's no proof or even suggestion that she had sex with the FBI guy in exchange for the lead. And you can say, yeah, that's not fair, but I kind of got to tell you, it falls into artistic license to me, because what could the deal have been that would have been better?
Yeah.
What deal could that have led to that would have been less morally compromised?
Yeah. If an FBI agent told her, yeah, this fucking loser did it, and she printed it uncritically, like, yeah. I actually hope you got some dick out of it, because if you just printed that for no reason,
John Hamm's a goddamn
help
snack.
you. Yeah. I hope you fucked a guy that hot to do this to a man's life. God,
because I guarantee you, the actual SAC in Atlanta was probably not John Hamm.
Yeah, that's true.
No.
John Ashton from Beverly Hills Cop.
So John Hamm whispers to her, "We're looking at the security guard," and then she's just sort of like mouth agape goes, "The fat fuck who lives with his mom? I can't believe I didn't think of this." And then she just goes, "This kind of puts a clock on things. So do you want to get a room or just go to my car?" and then also, like, in the next scene, Clint has to show, she approaches her male coworker to be like, could you do that thing for me where you like do my work for me and write the story? Because I'm not very good at writing, but I have a scoop. In writing the article, there's a line where Olivia Wilde is quoting from the piece that they're trying to get in print. And she describes what is the profile of a bomber. And she describes it as, quote, "a frustrated white man who is a former member of the police or military, or a police or military wannabe." That's the profile, which encompasses, I don't know, a third of every man in this country over a certain age.
Yeah.
And so from there, the FBI is like, they're like, the story leaks, and then like the head of the Atlanta division is like, "Fuck, the story's out there. Get Richard Jewell in here, but make it a non-adversarial interview." So what they do is that they trick him. And like from this point on, the movie becomes like a huge part of the movie becomes how easy it is for the FBI to manipulate and like trick Richard Jewell into incriminating himself by playing on his deep desire to help law enforcement and aid them in investigating.
Dropped. I was like, yeah, I'll watch this movie, and then I was like, oh wait, I forgot that the railroading of a flawed but fundamentally sweet and sometimes noble oath is one of my triggers. So it's really
upsetting.
So what do they do?
It's so sad to see.
It was hard, that scene.
So they come to his house and they're like, "Hey, Richard, the FBI is putting together a training video about what to do in a situation like that, and we want you to be a part of it. But unfortunately, we need to do it right now. So follow us to this federal building." And then they get him on camera. And they're like, "Okay, so we're just going to pretend here that you're a suspect, and we're going for authenticity. So we're going to hand you a document, and you're going to sign it, okay?" And then he's like, "I don't know about that." And he sort of he pretends to sign it without taking the cap off the pen. And they're like, "No, Richard, we actually do need you to sign this."
And it is alluded to that he did this because he had called his friend, the lawyer.
So yeah, he calls his friend prior to this when he gets offered the book deal by a sort of elder Will Menaker. He calls Watson Bryant, who's like, he hasn't spoken to in 10 years, but he's the only lawyer that he knows. And he initially calls him because he's like, "Look, can you negotiate this publishing contract? I don't know anything about it." And what Watson tells him on the phone is, he's like, "Okay, Richard, the contract's a contract. I normally don't do book deals, but hey, just don't sign anything until we talk." And it's that one crucial piece of advice that probably saved him. Don't sign anything.
Probably, yeah.
And, they get him in there, and Richard is smart enough to kind of realize what's going on. He's like, "Look, this is an official document. I don't feel comfortable signing it. I think I'd like to call my lawyer." And he calls Sam Rockwell, and he's like, "Hey, I'm in the downtown FBI office in Atlanta. Could you come, help me?" And Sam Rockwell's like, "Holy shit, what has this guy got himself into?" He's like, "Don't tell them anything. Don't talk to them. Just wait till I'm there." He gets him out of the clutches of the FBI. And then sort of the movie becomes about the relationship between him and Sam Rockwell. And Sam Rockwell is increasing frustration with him as he tries to defend him and be like, "Look, I'm the only guy in your corner. I believe you. I believe you that you didn't do this, but you got to understand, no one else does. And everyone that you talk to and every single thing that you say and do is only going to incriminate yourself further. So just shut the fuck up." And then we get more of Sam Rockwell's character, and we see there's another character who's sort of his legal aide or his secretary, but also it's later revealed his girlfriend and eventually wife, and her name is Nadia. And she's from the old country, and there's a scene where
Nadia Cachian, Anna's mom.
there's a scene where she says to him, she goes, "Where I come from, when the government says you're guilty, that's how you know you're innocent." And I was just thinking, what an alpha strong libertarian guy thing to have an Eastern European girlfriend named Nadia who's also your employee.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
And
so he got her through the mail.
It's Rockwell is really the only guy on his side, and then his mom is just like, why did Tom Brokaw say that about you? And it's just it's his mom and his lawyer are the only ones in his corner, as the media, just the same media that raised him up, just swarm around him to just consume his corpse. It's a really funny scene where Rockwell goes to his house and officially becomes his attorney. And he comes out of the house and he gets like thronged by reporters, and he's just like, look, yeah, like I'm representing him, you know, like blah, blah, blah. He's like going through this whole thing, and he gets in his car and he drives away. And what happens? Olivia Wilde has snuck into the back of his car and just pops up like some fucking like hitman and starts to, you know, sort of squeeze him for fucking juice. But because Sam Rockwell is a strong libertarian man going his own way, he is immune to the powers and seductress succubus-like powers of this vile Gorgon. And he's like, get the fuck out of my car. I'm going to call the cops. And then Olivia Wilde literally does the Tweety Bird meme where she's like, you want to call the cops? Go ahead. Call him, bitch. I'll have sex with him. She is literally the call the cops, I'll have sex with him meme. No, but what she actually does say, and Felix, this gets to your earlier point about journalists. She says, go ahead, call the cops. Cops love me. I tell their stories every day. Want me to tell yours? And like that is the crucial thing. Like that gets to like such to the heart of what like most crime beat reporting is that you have sources in law enforcement, and you get those sources by telling a version of events that is a story that they tell you that they want the public to know about. And that is how you advance in your career. That's how you get scoops. That's how you get stories, is by essentially dictating law enforcement's point of view.
Yep.
And yeah, you run PR for them.
Watson Bryant and Nadia, they eventually do this thing, and it's like this really good scene that's it cuts in between them walking the route from Centennial Park to the payphone that Eric Rudolph called the bombing in, and it's intercut between Michael Johnson racing to win the 200 and the 400 meter gold medal, and like they make the walk from the park to the phone, and then of course immediately realize that there's no way that Richard Jewell could have been in that park and made that phone call in the time frame that we like, the time frame that the sequence of events happened in, which is like maybe the fucking FBI should have done that to begin with. It's like it's obvious that he didn't do it.
It's making you contrast between like dumpy white Richard Jewell and Michael Johnson just being the fastest, most like physically perfect man in the world with the fucking gold jewelry and
Fastest man alive.
A superhuman, a god on earth, and then just a lump of oatmeal.
Who was walking with diarrhea? Yes.
So yeah, exactly. He was the 200 meter crab walk to the bathroom. So at that point, Rockwell realizes that like, holy shit, this guy's being railroaded, and like I'm only a real estate lawyer, but like this pisses me off, and like I'm the only one that can help him, so I'm going to take this seriously, and I'm going to help him. And then then the FBI comes in to like search him and his mother's house. And it's just like, he asked Richard, he's like, okay, do you have any guns in the house? And he's like, yeah, we're in Georgia. And he's like, okay, put them out on your bed. I don't want the FBI to get any surprises when they pull a fucking Uzi out of your cupboard. And lo and behold, he has like 30 fucking guns.
Again, though, he's not wrong. It is Georgia.
Yeah.
When they get to the point where he has like he's like, grenade. Why do you have a grenade? It's like, it's empty. It's like, yeah, where I'm from, guys do have grenade paperweights.
And
They're
it's
like,
just,
cool.
there's this brutal scene where like the FBI brings like 30 people into him and his mom's apartment to like ransack everything and just dissect every fucking piece of trash, every fucking square inch of their house. And Rockwell just keeps telling them like, don't say anything. And Richard Jewell just can't help himself. He keeps trying to talk to the cops, get them to like him, get them. He's like, I just want those guys to know that I'm law enforcement too. And Rockwell is just getting like more and more insane. And he's just like, don't you understand that these people want to put you in the electric chair? Why are you being so deferential to them? Why are you being so nice to them? And Richard, the whole second half of this movie is about Richard Jewell sort of getting over the hump of his affection for law enforcement and realizing that they're not actually on his side. They're looking to prosecute and convict him. So they don't look at you as a colleague. They look at you as a suspect. And it's this really brutal, like, because he's so like guileless. And it's just like him having to realize this is so sad to watch.
Hey!
Why doesn't it make you as angry as it makes me?
I am angry.
You could have fooled me. You're angry.
Of course I am. I don't know if angry is even a big enough word for how I feel. Come on.
Stop being such a doormat. Stop trying to be their best friend. You know, they're making fun of you out there. You know what they're calling you?
I know that. I know what it means when he says cop to cop. He doesn't mean Cop to cop, he thinks I'm
Do you?
the Pillsbury
Could've fooled
Doughboy.
me. I thought you guys were gonna get engaged.
And then, okay, so then what happens is like his again, it's just a totally just shattering performance. Like his mom just starts freaking out because the FBI is taking her Tupperware. They're taking her Tupperware and her under things. They're ransacking her feminine garments. And then she sort of freaks out.
They're taking her old lady things.
They're taking her things
it's
away.
Intimate. It's so intimate.
They're taking her Disney movies, and she's like, I use those to babysit. And then she runs outside. And so like his lawyer and his mom exit for a brief period of time. And then the fucking ultimate prick, John Hamm, just swoops in and just like sort of captures Richard Jewell, takes him aside, and gets him to call a phone number and be recorded saying, there's a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes. And he gets him to say it over and over again. And this is really the most upsetting scene in the movie. And I really want to underscore the absolute hatred I have for John Hamm's character in this movie. The real guy it's based on, and probably hundreds and hundreds of other fucking feds who are exactly like this prick.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, I'm violently hateful of his character in this movie and what he does to this poor oaf Richard Jewell. Rockwell just gets increasingly like his frustration with Richard is like very relatable because first time I watched this movie, I'm screaming at the fucking TV. It's just like, no, shut up, don't talk to these people. What are you doing? Stop it. And you know, and like Rockwell is just sort of like, well, why did you hire me as your lawyer if you're going to ignore everything I said? And like he breaks down and he says, I hired you because you were, and when we worked together, you were the only person who treated me like a human being. And he's like the only guy who like has any. Who treats him like with any level of like, if not respect, then dignity. Like he just treats him like a fellow human being who like he understands what he's going through and wants to help him. And it's just, there's something so tragic about that it like just really comes across in this movie.
Yeah. Again, another theme is that like just no one gets any dignity.
Yeah.
Like no one.
Not the people in the park, not the Macarena dancers. Not even Michael Johnson. Everyone's just part of this disgusting display.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, from there, it's just like the FBI just ratchets up all these ways to fucking entrap and incriminate him, including bugging his apartment and his lawyer's office. They get his one friend. They bring him in and press him into turning on Richard Jewell and like saying that they did the bombing together or that he had an accomplice, and then crucially imply that he was doing it because they were homosexual lovers. And there's a very
which
funny,
is not a part of the bomber profile.
and there's a very funny part in the movie where Richard Jewell is like, he's facing the death penalty and he keeps coming back to, he's like, I want them to know I'm not a homosexual.
Yeah.
He's like, I just want them to know I'm not gay. So like the FBI goes to egregious lengths to try to fucking entrap and incriminate him and get him to admit or confess to something he hasn't done, because crucially they have no evidence whatsoever that he was connected to this bombing in any way. There's no bomb residue on any of his things. There's no connections to any like militia or anti-government groups. There's no video footage. They have dick. And at this point, Olivia Wilde begins to realize, after Richard Jewell passes a polygraph test and him and Sam Rockwell come into her office at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution to stunt all over her for being a fake news journalist, she goes back to John Hamm and she's like, did you do the walk from the payphone to the park? Like, he couldn't have done it. And then without missing a beat, John Hamm is like, yeah, we know about that. He had an accomplice. And then she goes, wait, she goes, what happened to the lone bomber profile? And he goes, the profile is just a jumping off point. And I was like, fuck these fucking feds. I hate them so much because, again, like it should be underscored again that the only reason that we have an FBI is to stop people from blowing up pipe bombs in parks full of people. And they couldn't even fucking do that.
Yeah,
so like, why do they have all these powers over us? They don't even do their job to keep us safe.
It was the drunk teens and the large man. Like that was it. One of my formative memories was my dad telling me something I didn't know when I was a little kid, but he told me when I was about 12, that if the federal government really wants someone, they can ruin their life enough and make them fold and make them appear to the world as guilty because of a case that he had. And
exactly.
That was like a little fulcrum, a little thing I could push against that kept me from going like full West Wing lib. is knowing that federal law enforcement would do that.
Yeah,
and this, I feel like it's something we've forgotten over the years, and we've especially forgotten now because we want the FBI to be heroes, defenders of democracy. But there are thousands and thousands of lives ruined like this one.
And the thing is,
FBI.
Rockwell says to him at one point, he's like, Richard, the only thing you're guilty of right now is looking and acting like a guy that would blow up a bomb in a park full of people.
Yeah.
So anything you do to like further, further that case makes our job harder. So eventually, like the investigation goes on, and they never actually arrest him because they don't have anything to fucking. But like the damage in the media had already been done, and eventually, like they give a press conference where his mom pleads with President Clinton to help save my boy. She's just like she's cracking in front of all these cameras, just saying like, "Please, Mr. President, clear my son's name. Please, you can end this investigation if you wanted to." And so finally. They get him to come in and give an official interview to the FBI. And John Hamm is just like throws everything at him to get him to like, he just like to intimidate him or to like just get something because they know they have nothing. And he just stops him and goes, do you have any evidence? First he clarifies that he was there at the Jack Mack concert because he wanted to look at pretty girls and is not a homosexual. But he just goes like, and John Hamm is just like, when he finally when John Hamm's back is up against the wall, his character is just like, why don't you explain this to me, Richard? If 100 people got fucking injured in that bomb and you were standing in the one place, the one time that we walked out of there without a scratch, I was there. How the fuck can you explain that? And then Richard just sort of pauses and he's just like, do you have any actual evidence against me? And then he's just owned. FBI guy, shut up.
Yeah.
Owned.
Yeah.
That was like such a Jimmy Stewart moment, but that really fucking ripped my heart out.
Yeah.
No, I was like, good. Give it to him. Give it to him. He deserves one of these.
Yes.
This soulless fucking G-man. And then months later, it's 88 days after the investigation started. It's him and Rockwell are at a diner having coffee and donuts, and Hamm just swaggers in and just throws an envelope at them, and he's like, here you go. And he opens it up, and it's just like the official notice that the FBI no longer considers him a person of interest in this investigation. And then he's just like, let's get one thing clear. I still think your client is guilty as hell, and my clients are all the people in that park. I was there.
That I failed.
Yeah, that I
totally fucking failed.
Yeah,
asshole.
And then when he's
asshole.
and then when at one point John Hamm says to Richard Jewell, he says, "I was one of them," meaning the people who was in the park who got hurt. And it's like, no, you fucking weren't. You were like, I was a survivor. He was standing there with his fucking twiddling his thumbs when that bomb went off. And then he's just like taking it all on his back. It's like, well, I'm representing the victims by trying to railroad this sweet, gentle oaf into the gas chamber. Oh.
Also, the oaf was there too.
Yeah.
It never made any sense at all. None of his theories made any sense. So he just kept adapting in them and then just throwing in like, what, gay lovers? Like,
that was like, yeah, Amber, whenever the FBI runs out of ideas, they're like, just say he was gay. That'll get him to fuck up. We're gonna try to
Sounds
make him
pretty
make we're gonna try to make him make a mistake by implying that he's low key sus with it. So finally, Richard Jewell is vindicated. His mom gets her Tupperware back. He gets his guns back. And actually, like this wasn't in the movie, but it is Chapo related. One of the consolation prizes for having the government ruin your life and the media slander you to an entire planet full of people is that he did get to do a guest appearance on Saturday Night Live. And the episode he appeared on was the Sylvester Stallone Orange Julius episode that we talked with Adam McKay about.
Oh, fuck.
Mm-hmm.
He was
awesome.
He was at the end of the episode waving with the band and all the cast and shit like that. So Richard Jewell got a measure of vindication. And then like the movie at the very
He was,
end of
by the way, the Grand Marshal of, I believe, the Carmel, Indiana Independence Day Parade.
Oh, that must have been the greatest day of his life.
We put him in a convertible and he got to go through the parade and throw candy to children.
He must have been so fucking happy.
happy.
I know.
Oh
Makes
my
me so
god.
happy
To be in a
to know it
parade.
happened.
God.
To be in a
It's
parade
like
is
Candy
so-
to children.
Oh my god, it's like putting a fucking dog on a farm.
I know.
So the movie jumps ahead into the future, and we see Richard Jewell is back in law enforcement. He's a sheriff's deputy again, and he's working his job. And Rockwell walks through the door, and he's like, "Hey, Richard, it's been a long time." He's like, "Look at you, he's like, you finally got your badge. You made it." And he comes in, he tells him He just shows up to say, he's like, they got him. Eric Rudolph. They arrested the guy who did do the Centennial Park bombing. And, Eric Rudolph, who knows how many fucking crimes he committed or how many people he may have killed after in the 7 or 10 years at which he was still at large after the Olympic Park bombing. But, it should be noted that he did that because he was, a far right-wing anti-abortion zealot. And, that's why he killed those people and then planted several other bombs elsewhere at abortion clinics. So this was an actually ideologically motivated terrorist act. A pre-9/11
and also
one, too.
ex-troop.
Yeah.
Yep. Just like Timothy McVeigh.
Yeah, just like McVeigh. And I'm sure, unlike...
By the way, this is the one place where I actually think, beyond the kind of, there's some gender. There's some gender in the movie. But beyond that, the one thing where I think, this is still a Clint Eastwood joint, is that, they didn't go into at all who the actual right-wing psychopath that bombed the Olympics was.
Yeah.
Just leave that part off. There's victims, but there's no villains except for authority.
Yeah. So sometimes the anti-authority people are pretty bad too.
Yeah.
They're pretty bad.
Depends on what authority.
Yeah, I know. So, and then and Richard Jewell says, he's like, when the arraignment is going to be, because I want to be there in court when they charge him. And that's the last you see of him. And then it fades to black. And in what is actually really the most crushing fucking moment in the movie, the first end title card says, Richard Jewell died of heart failure in 2007 at 44.
No dignity.
Oh
No
It's just
dignity
exactly
for
it's
anyone,
just-
ever.
Yeah, that's his life, one of, poor health, bad jobs, getting massively fucked over, and then maybe a little bit of a little bit of respect and dignity restored, and when people realized how wrong they were about it. But it's just the idea that he died at 44 is just so sad.
So fucking sad.
It's so fucking heartbreaking. But then it does show you that Rockwell's character, Watson Bryant, married Nadia, his Eastern European girlfriend and employee, and they have 2 kids. And Barbara Jewell, Richard's mom, still babysits them to this day.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just, oh my God.
I know.
Strong men also cry.
Oh my
Strong
God.
men also cry.
This might be the most Chapo movie ever. It's, again, about a fat loser with diarrhea who tries to do good and is persecuted, and we love him, folks. We love him.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Richard Jewell and Paul Walter Hauser's portrayal of him is such a stock Chapo character that is, we certainly have made that kind of person a figure of fun and risibility and not unjustly so. But I mean, this movie is really heartbreaking because it really does that turn that back on you in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the thing that sticks with me is it's set in 2000. It's 1996, but it feels like it's an absolute pinpoint biopsy of the current moment in terms of all the forces and how they're perceived, the wild alienation between Americans along cultural lines, this deep suspicion of all of these failed institutions that have no credibility anymore, but still determine the course of our lives, like the media and the fucking military and law enforcement and the fucking academia, for that matter. And we just think about how much worse things have gotten since the mid-90s and how much more mediated our lives are by the fucking internet and shit. And I can't help thinking that, in 1996, Richard Jewell, that guy, he was the hero at Centennial Park. But I can't help thinking that if that same guy grew up now, he would have been planting the fucking bomb.
Not to be all whatever, but we all could have been planting the bomb, depending on.
Well, I'm just saying because of how worse everything has gotten at all the same axis since 1996.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there.
And that's what I mean about
probably
this.
wouldn't be planting the bomb. Maybe it'd be a mass shooter or something.
Oh, exactly. I mean, I was just trying to do symmetry.
Yeah.
I mean, he's too fucked. He would be like the guy who sent the bombs that were just
Cesar Sayoc.
Hitachis taped to a fucking a burner cell phone to Robert De Niro, the guy with the van.
I mean, my comment would be that it's all the more terrifying because the FBI profile that they stitched up Richard Jewell with is the exact opposite of who Eric Rudolph was. who was a guy who was part of a network of fucking anti-government extremists and had an intense ideological motivation for carrying out an act of terrorism. It wasn't like he was just a wannabe hero or wanted notoriety or attention or to like play a part or get some sort of accolade. It was like this was a politically motivated act of terrorism that was done with accomplices as part of a broader kind of terrorist network. And then like the FBI completely missed that, like they did also miss 9/11.
He had trouble integrating into society, but he had moments where he was very successful too. Like, so he was sort of like up and down, which is also sort of indistinguishable. I mean, like a lot of Americans are. They have good luck and they have bad luck. So it's not like, you know, a serial loser, someone with just like a perfect track record of failure is like the one you need to be looking for. But it's obviously like the most attractive person to point at and be like, yeah, it's probably that guy. He's the biggest fucking loser.
And, you know, like, yeah, like exactly. Like there's one moment where I forget, it's either Kathy Bates or Richard Jewell is sort of despairing to Sam Rockwell about like, you know, how can they do this to someone? And Rockwell goes, it's easy. It's because you don't matter. And like that to me really like sums up the horror of this movie is that like, if you don't matter, it's like I said, as soon as that glowing eye fixates on you, anybody can fit the profile. Anyone can be broken, and anyone can have their lives ruined if you fit the picture of a character in a story that very powerful people want to tell or need to tell because they need to tell it because they're not actually in control. Like as I've said many times on this show, they can't actually stop bombs from going up in fucking parks.
Yeah, it's just all they have is the ability to be authoritarian.
Yep. They have to find someone. Someone has to pay. That's
for their inability to actually manage any of these things they're supposed to be doing. Yeah. All there could ever be is eternal scapegoats.
I thought it was a really good Clint Eastwood movie, and mostly I watched them at this point, the later ones, to sort of laugh or to get some sort of like ambient sense of the reactionary imaginary or whatever. But this was
I totally agree.
Morally complicated, but also sympathetic, and it's literally because, again, he chose the story of someone that he would never fantasize being.
Yeah. I think that pretty much sums it up. We've gone long on this one, but
sorry.
That was Richard. This was, folks. That was the life and times of Richard Jewell, and that was the strange moment of America in the late 90s, entering the 21st century, and that nobody could see what was coming. But this movie is very much about the America that we currently live in many ways. So
absolutely,
I think that about sums it up. Just God, Clint Eastwood. We simply must bow down before
He's still got a few
the ancient wizened master. Bow down before him. Let's go out. Roll that beautiful Macarena sound. Bye, everybody.
Bye.